a man from Paul Nathan's office. They came and asked me if I wanted to do a film. And it was the Elvis Presley film. And oh my gosh. And it was our first screen kiss. Of course, that film.
Dolores Hart. The name that once made Hollywood in the late 1950s believed they had found a new Grace Kelly. Her pure beauty, bright eyes, gentle smile, and natural acting talent placed her among the most sought-after young stars after only a few films. She was the first woman ever to kiss Elvis Presley on screen, a detail that might seem small, yet was enough to carve her name into the history of American popular culture. Her career was wide open, with the promises of fame, fortune, and love all within reach. And yet, just as the world was beginning to glimpse the dazzling future awaiting Dolores Hart, she chose to walk away, leaving behind Hollywood, an engagement, and the glow of stardom to step into the gates of a secluded convent in Connecticut. That sudden disappearance cut into the public's memory like a scar, a young, radiant star who vanished from the screen, leaving behind rumors, regrets, and a mix of reverence and shock. Dolores Hart's story is not the tragedy of downfall, as it has been for so many other stars, but the tragedy of renunciation, a painful choice that turned her life into a living testament of loss, solitude, and quiet sacrifice. And within that very tragedy, Dolores Hart entered the immortal memory of Hollywood. Dolores Hart, born Dolores Hicks on October 20th, 1938 in Chicago, came into a family that looked ordinary on the surface, but carried deep undercurrents of turmoil. She was the only child of actor Burt Hicks and his wife, Harriet. When her parents divorced early, little Dolores was torn between two worlds: the strict discipline of her Catholic maternal grandparents and the glittering stage life of her actor father. The years spent with her grandparents planted the first seeds of faith in her heart. She attended Catholic school, joined church services, and found comfort in hymns. It was a refuge from the days when she witnessed her parents' discord. Yet the glow of her father's stage held a pull of its own. From the wings, the young girl quietly watched him perform, memorizing every gesture, every rhythm, nurturing the dream that one day she too would step into the spotlight. After graduating from high school, Dolores enrolled at Marymount College. There, she began taking small roles and quickly caught the eye of renowned producer Hal Wallace. He was the one who reborn Dolores Hicks as Dolores Hart, a new name crafted for Hollywood. From a girl torn between faith and the stage, Dolores Hart now stood at the threshold of stardom. Her childhood story was not merely one of a broken family, but the origin of a deeper inner conflict. The quiet of the convent she once turned to as a child, set against the irresistible pull of the stage and the arts. This very conflict would shape the destiny of Dolores Hart, a destiny that would soon leave all of Hollywood in shock. The turning point came quickly. In 1957, Dolores Hart was cast as Susan Jessup in Loving You, Elvis Presley's first color film. At the time, she didn't even know who Elvis was. But within days on set, she realized he was a special young man. Behind the rebellious exterior was someone gentle, a little shy, and notably always carrying a Bible. At just 19, with her pure angelic face, Dolores Hart made history as the first woman ever to kiss Elvis on screen. For Dolores, that kiss was simply part of the job. But outside the studio, it became a cultural sensation. Millions of female fans burned with jealousy. Headlines screamed across newspapers, and her name skyrocketed overnight. More than co-stars, she and Elvis formed an unusual friendship. Between takes, the two would often sit quietly side by side, reading passages and sharing reflections on faith, an almost surreal image amid the chaos of a movie set. This success brought Dolores back to the screen with Elvis in King Creole, 1958, one of his most highly praised films. There, she played Nellie, the gentle girl who brought a glimmer of light to Danny Fisher's troubled world. The role required nuance and emotional depth, and Dolores proved she was far more than Elvis's girl. She was a genuine actress. Within just a few years, Dolores stepped out of Presley's shadow. She appeared in Wild is the Wind, 1957, alongside Anna Magnani and Anthony Quinn, then Lonely Hearts, 1958, with Montgomery Clift. Rare opportunities for a newcomer to stand beside such seasoned stars. By 1960, her name was cemented in the public's mind thanks to Where the Boys Are, a youth drama that became a cultural phenomenon in America. With her soft blonde hair, gentle voice, and refined poise, the press hailed her as the new Grace Kelly. Yet behind the glamorous image, Dolores resisted being confined to the role of the innocent ingenue. She longed for parts that were deeper, more complex, roles that could touch human fragility and pain. As the 1950s drew to a close, Hollywood seemed to have found a star destined to go far. But just as the road ahead grew brightest, the quiet seed of faith planted in her childhood began to stir, foreshadowing a turn no one could have predicted. After the breakout years, Dolores Hart entered the 1960s with a firm footing, both as a youth icon through Where the Boys Are, 1960, and as an actress capable of carrying weightier roles. The film became a cultural phenomenon, reflecting the longing for love and freedom among post-war American youth. Her character Merritt was not a reckless girl, but a thoughtful young woman searching for the meaning of love, a reflection of Dolores's true inner self. Yet it was her role in Francis of Assisi, 1961, that truly changed her. Filmed in Italy, she portrayed St. Clare, the woman who renounced wealth to follow St. Francis. Dolores acted with such reverence that when she met Pope John XXIII during filming, he told her plainly, "You are Clare." That single sentence etched itself deep into her memory, leaving a mark she could not forget. From then on, she began to ask, was acting really the only path for her life? Dolores Hart's ambitions were not confined to the screen. On Broadway, she earned a Tony nomination in 1959 for The Pleasure of His Company, cementing her reputation as a versatile artist. Critics of the time saw her as one of the rare talents able to succeed both on stage and in film. But amid the applause, Dolores slowly recognized a bitter truth. Hollywood was a machine designed to grind individuality down. From her wardrobe, her words, even the men she was advised to be seen with, everything was orchestrated by others. To the audience, she was a radiant star. Inside, she felt only an expanding emptiness. As she once said, "Money and contracts can fill your pockets, but they will never fill your heart." In 1962, she again proved her range with The Inspector, playing a Holocaust survivor seeking refuge in Palestine. It was perhaps the rawest, most emotionally charged performance of her career, showing her ability to touch the deepest corners of human pain. But it was also the moment fatigue set in. The glamorous parties and endless contracts no longer stirred her spirit. Dolores saw more clearly than ever the stark contrast between Hollywood's glitter and the peace she once felt in the church as a child. Her last film, Come Fly With Me, 1963, a lighthearted romantic comedy about flight attendants, became an unintended full stop. To the audience, she was a dazzling star at her peak. But to Dolores Hart herself, it was already clear. The years ahead would no longer belong to Hollywood. At the very height of her career, Dolores Hart seemed to have found the earthly happiness she had always longed for. In 1960, she met Don Robinson, a successful, kind, and devoted architect. Their relationship was not the fleeting romance so common in show business, but a genuine bond, gentle, steady, and full of compassion. For Dolores, Don became a warm anchor in the whirlwind of fame that was wearing her down. 3 years later, Don proposed, and Dolores accepted. They began planning a grand wedding, a shared home, a future that promised stability. On her finger, the engagement ring sparkled as a symbol of a new beginning. Yet the closer the wedding approached, the more often she looked into the dressing room mirror and felt her heart unsettled. Memories of portraying St. Clair in Francis of Assisi came rushing back, along with her visits to Regina Laudis Abbey in Connecticut. There, Dolores had experienced rare silence, smelling the earth in the garden, hearing the chapel bells at dawn, watching the nuns live in poverty, yet radiant with joy. Each time she left, she carried with her a quiet sorrow, as if she had just stepped away from the true home of her soul. Sleepless nights tore her apart. On one side was Don Robinson, true love, a warm home, the kind of life countless women dreamed of. On the other was a sacred calling, uncertain and severe, but offering a peace Hollywood could never provide. She cried in silence, terrified of breaking the heart of the man who had given her everything. At last, Dolores chose honesty. She told Don Robinson, "I love you, but I feel God is calling me. I cannot ignore it. If you truly love me, please help me." Hearing those unexpected words, Don was devastated, but he did not reproach her. He only sighed. "I always knew. Every love has its secret, and I knew what ours was." And so, with the profound love he still bore her, Don Robinson acted with dignity until the end. He was the one who drove Dolores to the Abbey gates. There, she slipped off the engagement ring, set aside her glamorous dresses, and abandoned a blazing career to step into a world entirely opposite. The world of silence, discipline, and austerity. The news exploded like a storm. The actress who had kissed Elvis Presley, once hailed as the new Grace Kelly, was giving it all up to become a nun. The press dismissed it as a stunt. Audiences called it a performance. But Dolores Hart truly vanished from Hollywood, leaving behind a haunting question. What could make a 25-year-old star renounce everything others only dreamed of? At that time, news about Dolores Hart and Elvis Presley was everywhere, with many claiming it was the reason she abandoned her career to enter the convent. They had first met as co-stars in the hit film Loving You. What began as a simple friendship gradually grew into a quiet, romantic fondness. It was never a fiery or scandalous affair, but rather a discreet bond built on mutual respect. Dolores always remembered Elvis as a sensitive man, someone who listened, who hid his loneliness behind a smile. Most importantly, he respected her faith and the boundaries she set. In a world where women were often pressured by power, Elvis never pushed Dolores off her chosen path. Yet the public never believed in a purely innocent friendship. When Dolores suddenly left Hollywood for the Abbey, vicious rumors spread that she was carrying Elvis's child. Tabloids fed on this gossip as though it were a hidden scandal. weaving tales of a secret love between the king of rock and roll and the beautiful actress. But Dolores firmly denied it. Nothing could be further from the truth. It was a painful wound that a genuine friendship had been twisted into cheap entertainment, distorted into a scandal. For Dolores, Elvis was never the whirlwind of lust people imagined, but a lost soul searching for peace. And she, though only crossing paths with him in a few films, remembered him as a dear friend. A reminder that even under Hollywood's blinding lights, there was still room for kindness and moments of sincerity. Sadly, the world never cared to believe in such simple truths. When the iron gates of Regina Laudis Abbey closed behind her, Dolores Hart stepped into an entirely unfamiliar world. The woman who once wore glamorous gowns now donned the simple habit of a nun. The actress who had once walked the red carpet at the Oscars now awoke at 2 a.m. for the first prayer of the day. The star, once adored by millions, now blended into a community of nuns, all equal before God. Life there was harsh. 8 prayers a day, gardening, milking cows, sewing, making cheese, tending livestock. Yet in those simple labors, Dolores found the peace that Hollywood's spotlight could never bring. She once said, "I didn't give up my life. I found it still." That peace never erased the wounds of her heart. The image of Don Robinson, the man who had driven her to the convent, remained etched deep inside. Don never married. For nearly half a century, he faithfully visited Dolores every Christmas and Easter. They were no longer lovers, but soulmates, sharing a love in its purest and most painful form. It was a love beyond the physical, refined by sacrifice and respect. Dolores once admitted that her greatest sorrow was not leaving her career, but watching the man who loved her spend his life alone, keeping his promise to always be there. When Don Robinson passed away in 2011, Dolores was at his bedside, holding his hand as he took his final breath. In that moment, the old wound reopened. She had lost him a second time, this time forever. Their last hand clasp closed a lifelong love story, never fulfilled, yet never lost. Dolores later took her final vows, becoming Mother Dolores Hart, and for many years served as prioress, guiding her community of nuns. She called them her sisters, while seeing herself as their spiritual mother. Though she had no children of her own, she nurtured generations of young women with gentleness, discipline, and faith. From time to time, Hollywood came calling. Dolores remained a voting member of the Academy, receiving films each year to cast her Oscar ballot. In 2012, she made a surprising return to the red carpet, this time in her habit, when the documentary God is the Bigger Elvis, telling her life story, was nominated for an Oscar. The sight of a nun walking among glamorous movie stars became an enduring symbol of her extraordinary journey. Dolores had not returned to reclaim the spotlight, but to raise funds for the Abbey, the place she had dedicated her life to. Her personal life was a paradox. The severe solitude of the convent on one side, and on the other, a half-century love quietly sustained with a man who never left her heart. In that sorrow, Dolores found transcendence, a love both earthly and sacred, that made her life story haunting and almost unparalleled in Hollywood history. Dolores Hart's legacy does not lie in the number of roles she played or in prestigious awards, but in the decision to walk away just as everything was beginning to shine its brightest. In Hollywood history, few stars at the height of their careers have ever chosen to abandon it all to follow a spiritual calling. Her act shocked the public of the 1960s, but over time, it became a symbol of courage and absolute loyalty to faith. Dolores was often compared to Grace Kelly for her beauty and poise. Yet while Grace Kelly chose to become the Princess of Monaco, Dolores chose the seclusion of a convent in Connecticut. Two very different paths, yet both unforgettable stories of women daring to defy the destiny laid before them. Within the Catholic community, Mother Dolores Hart stands as a model of the strength found in renunciation. She showed that joy is not only discovered beneath the spotlight, but can blossom in a small garden, a cowshed, or in midnight prayers. The image of the nun who once kissed Elvis Presley remains a lasting reminder that faith can transform an entire life, even that of a young Hollywood starlet. For Hollywood, Dolores Hart also left a profound mark. Though her career lasted less than a decade, her performances in Loving You, King Creole, Where the Boys Are, Francis of Assisi, and The Inspector endure as evidence of a refined talent, an actress capable of both brilliance and deep empathy for human suffering. In 2012, when Dolores appeared on the red carpet in her habit for the documentary God is the Bigger Elvis, it was not merely a curiosity, but a reaffirmation of her unique place, a symbol where art and faith converge. For the public, Dolores Hart's greatest legacy is the question she left behind. Between fame and peace, between love and faith, between the world and the spirit, what will we choose? That question makes her story not only a relic of Hollywood's past, but a lesson still resonant for generations to come. More than 60 years since leaving Hollywood, Dolores Hart, now Mother Dolores Hart, still lives at Regina Laudis Abbey in Connecticut. In her 80s, she no longer serves as prioress, but continues to follow the disciplined rhythm she has embraced all her life, rising at 2 a.m. for the first prayer, tending the garden, caring for livestock, and sharing in the communal work of the Abbey. She lives slowly and quietly, yet never entirely apart from the world. Mother Dolores maintains her bond with the arts in her own way. As a member of the Academy, she still receives films each year to cast her Oscar ballot. For her, it is a thread linking past and present, the star and the nun. When health allows, she also participates in fundraising projects, writes books, and speaks publicly about her life journey. Her memoir, The Ear of the Heart, not only recounts the path from Hollywood to the convent, but also stands as a testimony to faith in inner peace. In recent interviews, Dolores often smiles when asked if she ever feels regret. Her answer is always resolute. No. I chose the path that brought peace. Every loss made room for a deeper joy. In her twilight years, she continues to devote herself to projects expanding the Abbey, hoping it can welcome more generations of young sisters. In recent years, audiences have occasionally seen her in documentaries or even on the red carpet, still in her simple habit. She does not return to reclaim the spotlight, but to tell the world about a choice that once stunned Hollywood, a choice that has since become a symbol. Within the silence of the Abbey, Dolores Hart has found what the stage lights never could: enduring peace. Her story, therefore, does not end as a tragedy of love or career, but as a journey of rebirth, from a dazzling star into a humble woman who gave her life wholly to faith. Dolores Hart did not fall because of scandal, nor did she disappear because of failure. She walked away while standing at the very peak. In a world where everyone longs for the spotlight, she bravely chose the opposite path, leaving behind love, breaking off an engagement, and abandoning a glittering future to seek the silence of the convent. It was the tragedy of renunciation, a quiet tragedy, yet haunting, one that the world would never forget. And yet, within that very tragedy, Dolores Hart found her own truth. 60 years later, the starlet who once kissed Elvis on screen now appears in a nun's habit, her face serene, her eyes shining. She is no longer Hollywood's new Grace Kelly, but a symbol of loyalty to faith and the courage to live authentically. Dolores Hart's story makes us ask ourselves, in our own lives, when faced with the choice between fame and peace, between love and faith, will we have the courage to take the harder road? If you, too, feel the power and haunting beauty of this journey, share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to continue uncovering the tragic yet inspiring stories hidden behind Hollywood's dazzling lights.